The corridors of the Zhyrex prison facility were as cold and sterile as the creatures that operated them. Aria Lin moved swiftly, her boots silent against the metal flooring, her breath controlled. The walls around her hummed with the low, rhythmic pulse of the facility's energy field, an invisible web designed to trap and disorient. The mission had gone smoothly so far, but she knew better than to trust the silence. She had one goal: gather intel and get out undetected. Her dark eyes scanned the narrow hallway, the flickering lights casting long shadows that twisted and distorted. There were no guards, no movement. Just the occasional hum of machinery, like the very bones of the building groaning beneath its own weight. Aria pushed forward, her heart steady, her mind sharp. The Zhyrex thought of humans as inferior, an expendable species. What they didn't know was that she was the one they'd underestimated. A sudden hiss came from behind her, and her body reacted before her mind had time to process the danger. She turned, pulling her knife from its sheath as a shadow lunged toward her. Two Zhyrex soldiers, towering and armored in sleek, black exoskeletons, emerged from the darkened doorways. Their weapons, designed to incapacitate, hummed with energy. Aria didn't flinch. She moved with the precision of a predator, her instincts honed by years of training. The first soldier's weapon crackled, but Aria was already on him, using his momentum to drive the blade deep into the joint of his armor. The second soldier barely had time to react before her elbow connected with his throat. He stumbled backward, choking. She wasted no time, hitting the pressure points on his neck, disabling him with a quick strike. The sounds of her attack echoed down the corridor, but there was no time to savor her success. More footsteps approached, fast and measured. She ducked into a side room, a small supply closet that reeked of chemicals and stale air. Her breath came in shallow gasps, but she remained still, waiting. They came in pairs, Zhyrex soldiers, each one scanning the area for any sign of intruders. Aria's heart raced, her every nerve on edge. The enemy was relentless. The fact that they were this close meant her cover had been blown. She cursed under her breath. No matter. She had to finish the mission. She was the best Earth had to offer, and no one would stop her, not now. As the soldiers passed her hiding spot, she crept from the shadows, slipping into the main control room of the facility. A large central console blinked in front of her, pulsing with unreadable alien symbols. Her fingers flew over the interface, hacking into the system with ease. The data she needed was almost within reach, just a few more commands, and she could send it back to Earth. But then, everything went wrong. The alarms blared, sharp and shrill, reverberating through the hallways, cutting through the silence like a blade. Aria's stomach dropped. Her cover was blown, but it didn't matter. She wasn't going down without a fight. She pulled her gun from its holster, checking the charge. A voice crackled through the intercom. "You're a long way from home, human." Aria's heart skipped. The voice was cold, calculating, she recognized it immediately. "Commander Chlora." "Your kind is so easy to track," Chlora continued, her tone dripping with disdain. "You've underestimated us, and now, you'll pay the price." Aria gritted her teeth. "You've underestimated me." Before she could react, a powerful force slammed into her back, sending her sprawling onto the cold floor. She rolled, twisting just in time to see a pair of Zhyrex soldiers stepping forward, their weapons aimed at her chest. They weren't going to make this easy. But Aria didn't intend to make it easy for them either. She sprang to her feet, her body moving faster than the soldiers could react. The first shot missed, and with a flick of her wrist, Aria sent her blade flying into the throat of one of them. The other hesitated, and in that moment, Aria closed the gap, knocking the weapon from his hands and landing a punch that sent him crashing to the ground. For a moment, she stood, catching her breath. But then, more soldiers poured into the room, surrounding her from every angle. This wasn't a fight she could win. Not here. Not against so many. Trap. She had walked right into it. Chlora had been waiting, using the prisoners as bait. The realization hit her with a sharp sting, but there was no time to dwell. Her vision blurred slightly as she felt the burn in her muscles, the sting of 1,000 bruises from her skirmishes. Yet, she stood tall, refusing to be taken down. Aria's mind raced as the soldiers closed in. A dozen of them, all armed. Clara had planned for this, her trap too tight, her forces too numerous. This wasn't just about the data anymore. It was about survival. Aria knew she had to act quickly. She scanned the room, her gaze landing on a small control panel to the side. With a sudden burst of energy, she dove towards it, dodging incoming fire, and slammed her fist onto the control. The lights flickered, and for a brief second, everything went dark. She dove into the shadows, using the momentary confusion to her advantage. But it wasn't enough. A searing pain shot through her side as a Zhyrex soldier's plasma round struck her. She stumbled, gasping for air, and fell to her knees. Blood oozed from the wound, but she refused to stay down. Not yet. The sound of heavy boots echoed in her ears, the unmistakable cadence of Clara's arrival. "You fought well," Clara's voice echoed through the dark. "But this is the end." Aria's vision blurred, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She felt the cold metal against her skin as she collapsed. Her last thought before everything went black was that she had failed. Humanity would never know what she had uncovered. As the darkness closed in, Aria's body lay still, defeated. For 37 minutes, the Zhyrex held her in their grip, her pulse fading, her life extinguished. And then, something happened that Clara could not have predicted. The air shifted. The silence was broken by a faint hum. Aria's chest rose with a sudden, violent breath. The darkness of the chamber was suffocating, oppressive. For 37 minutes, it had swallowed Aria whole, its silence thick and unnatural. Her body, once filled with searing pain, now felt as if it were suspended in time, cold and empty. But then, it was as if a switch had flipped. A pulse, small at first, like a whisper of life, thrummed deep inside her chest. Her heart, still bloodied and broken moments ago, found a rhythm. And with it, the surge of awareness flooded back, sharp and sudden. Aria's breath hitched as her eyes snapped open. The sterile room was as she had left it, but it no longer felt quite so still. It was as though the very air around her had changed. The hum of the Zhyrex technology that filled the space reverberated louder in her ears, every sound amplified. Her vision sharpened, each detail clearer than before, the slick black walls, the faint glow of alien symbols overhead, the shadows that now seemed to shift with purpose. For a moment, she didn't move. She simply lay there, trying to make sense of what had happened. She had died. She knew she had. It had been so final, so complete. There had been no lingering pain, no final gasp of breath. Just cold, overwhelming darkness. But now she was alive. Her muscles twitched, her joints crackled as though they were being lubricated by a force beyond physical healing. Her fingers moved, flexed, then clenched into fists. There was a power inside her she couldn't quite understand, but she was no longer afraid. Not anymore. The sharp sting of her side where the plasma round had struck her earlier was gone. She raised her hand to the wound and found only smooth skin, unmarred by injury. The blood that had pooled beneath her was gone as well. Her body had reset itself, revived, as though her death had been nothing more than a glitch in the system. She could feel it now, the pulse of something in her veins. A kind of energy that surged through her in waves, like an electric charge sparking to life within every cell of her body. It was unfamiliar, yet strangely comforting. This power, she thought. This is me. A faint glow emanated from her, subtle but undeniable. The soft hum of the Zhyrex technology around her now felt different. It didn't feel like a prison anymore. It felt like a weapon. Aria slowly stood, her legs unsteady at first but gaining strength with each passing second. She staggered, hands bracing against the wall as she adjusted to her new reality. Her mind was racing, trying to piece together the impossible. How had she come back? What had happened in those 37 minutes? She remembered Clara's voice, mocking her, calling her fragile. She remembered the weight of the Zhyrex soldiers closing in, the plasma round tearing through her side, but everything before that seemed so distant now, like a dream fading with the morning light. The voice of Chlora suddenly crackled through the speakers, snapping Aria back into the present. Impressive, Chlora's voice purred, cold and amused. You survived the impossible. But you'll find, human, that even the most resilient of your kind can be broken. I will break you. Your spirit. Your body. Your very will. Aria's lips curled into a wry smile. Is that so? Her senses were heightened, every sound now crisp and clear. She could hear Chlora's footsteps, the distant chatter of her soldiers. And then, there was the sound of her own heartbeat, strong, steady, and defiant. The Zhyrex had made a grave mistake. They thought they had killed her. They thought they had won. But in reality, they had awakened something far more dangerous than a simple operative. They had awakened humanity's greatest weapon, survival. Her hand clenched into a fist as she turned toward the door, which was now weakly pulsing with the energy field that controlled the facility. With a single thought, she surged forward, slamming her shoulder into the door. The metal screeched as it bent under the pressure, and the door buckled, falling open. Aria didn't pause. She knew there was no time to waste. The Zhyrex would soon realize what had happened. Chlora would send more soldiers after her. But she wasn't just going to run. She was going to make them regret underestimating humanity. She stepped out into the hallway, her body moving with newfound grace and speed. Each movement was fluid, as if her muscles were attuned to the rhythm of her surroundings. The sound of Zhyrex soldiers approaching grew louder, and Aria's senses zeroed in on them. The first soldiers she encountered didn't even see her coming. Aria moved with blinding speed, her hand reaching out to seize the soldier's arm, twisting it behind his back. He screamed, the sound a twisted mockery of humanity's own primal fear. With a single, brutal motion, she snapped his neck. The body dropped to the ground with a sickening thud, but Aria didn't pause. The next soldier was already rounding the corner, and he didn't stand a chance. She dispatched him swiftly, her movements a blur. There was no hesitation, no mercy. She had been pushed to the brink, to death itself, and now she was something more than she had been before. The blood rushing through her veins, the energy that hummed beneath her skin, was something far beyond human. The Zhyrex had tried to break her, but instead, they had forged her into something else entirely. She was no longer just a human operative. She was a force of nature, a living, breathing weapon. As the last soldier fell, Aria stood over him, breathing heavily. Her eyes locked onto the corridor ahead. There's no turning back now. Her thoughts were clear, her purpose unwavering. She would not rest until the Zhyrex paid for their cruelty. Not just for her, but for every human they had tortured, every life they had destroyed. They had killed her, but now, she would make them feel the full weight of her vengeance. Aria's mind sharpened, every step deliberate, every decision made with precision. The facility was vast, its depths filled with untold secrets and enemies she needed to face. But for the first time, she didn't fear what came next. She welcomed it. Let's see if you can break me, Chlora, she muttered under her breath, her voice low and dangerous. Let's see what happens when you awaken the beast. Aria's footsteps echoed through the hallway as she moved forward, her senses keen and every instinct firing on all cylinders. She had died, and yet here she was, alive, empowered, and driven by a singular purpose, survival. And for the Zhyrex, the war had just begun. The air in the Zhyrex facility felt different now. It was thick with tension, humming with an energy Aria had never felt before. The walls, once oppressive, now seemed to pulse in rhythm with her newfound power. She wasn't just moving through this place anymore, she was hunting. Every step she took, every door she breached, every soldier she encountered was another piece of the puzzle falling into place. The Zhyrex soldiers had underestimated humanity before, but they hadn't realized the sheer depth of what it meant to defy death. Aria was no longer just a human operative. She was a force. A reckoning. As she moved deeper into the heart of the facility, her senses heightened with every passing moment. She could hear the distant chatter of Zhyrex soldiers, their communications frenzied, unsure of what was happening. The alarms were still blaring, but their meaning had shifted. What had once been a signal of intrusion now felt like a desperate cry for help. Aria was the storm they had foolishly invited. She rounded a corner, her body moving with lethal precision, and spotted a pair of guards stationed at a junction. They barely had time to react before Aria was upon them. With fluid motion, she swept low, driving her elbow into the first soldier's stomach. The impact sent him crashing to the ground, gasping for air. The second soldier fumbled with his weapon, but Aria was faster. She closed the gap, disarming him in a single, swift motion. The soldier's eyes widened in fear, but it was too late. Aria's hand shot forward, locking around his throat, squeezing until the life drained from his body. The two bodies hit the floor with an almost musical finality. But Aria didn't pause. She couldn't afford to. Chlora would be coming for her soon, and the Zhyrex general didn't take defeat lightly. As she continued down the dimly lit corridor, she felt the pull of something else, a magnetic force, an almost insatiable need to confront the one who had orchestrated this entire nightmare. Chlora's mocking voice, still fresh in her mind, pushed her forward. She had to get to the control room. It was where it all started, where Chlora would be waiting for her. And when she reached her, there would be no escape. The corridors grew more cramped as Aria made her way toward the core of the facility, the walls closing in as if the place itself were tightening its grip. The doors along the way were heavily reinforced, but nothing stopped her now. She moved faster, the hum of her enhanced body syncing with the rhythmic pulse of the facility. Each step was a promise of what was to come. Finally, she reached the control room. It was a large, sterile space, dimly lit by the glow of alien screens that flickered and hummed. At the center stood a massive control console, its holographic interface shimmering in the low light. And there, standing at the console, was Chlora. The Zhyrex commander was everything Aria had imagined, tall, imposing, and cold, her exoskeleton gleaming in the dim light. Chlora's eyes locked onto Aria's as she entered, her gaze filled with a mix of disdain and something darker, fear. "So, the little human has come to finish what she started." Chlora's voice was low, but her words carried a sharpness that cut through the tension. "You should have died, you know. But now that you're here, I suppose I'll have to deal with you myself." Aria didn't flinch. She stepped forward, her every movement deliberate. "You thought you had me," she said, her voice calm, but her words carried the weight of 1,000 deaths. "You thought you could break me. But you made a mistake. I'm not just here to escape. I'm here to destroy everything you've built." Chlora chuckled, a cold, mirthless sound that sent a chill through the room. "Destroy? You're just a human, insignificant, fragile." Aria's hand shot out before Chlora could finish, her fingers brushing over the console's interface. The holographic screens flickered, and suddenly, the entire facility came to life. The lights grew brighter, the hum of the machinery louder. Aria's heart raced as she accessed the core systems. She wasn't just going to defeat Chlora, she was going to dismantle everything the Zhyrex had created. But Chlora wasn't intimidated. She lunged forward, her movements too quick for Aria to react. The Zhyrex commander grabbed her by the throat, lifting her off the ground with ease, her exoskeleton's strength undeniable. Aria struggled, her vision narrowing, but she could feel the power building inside her. She wasn't helpless, not now. A surge of energy, like an electric current, shot through her body. Aria's legs kicked out, sending Chlora stumbling backward. With a growl of frustration, Chlora released her, but Aria wasn't finished. She sprang forward, driving her knee into Chlora's chest. The Zhyrex commander grunted, her exoskeleton creaking under the force of the blow. Aria didn't give her a chance to recover. She grabbed Chlora's arm, twisting it behind her back and slamming her into the console. The Zhyrex commander groaned in pain, her eyes wide with disbelief. For the first time, she was on the back foot. "You think I'm weak?" Aria whispered, her voice dripping with venom. "You think you can control us? You don't know humanity. You never have." With a final, vicious twist, Aria forced Clara to the ground, pinning her there. The commander's exoskeleton screeched against the floor as she struggled to regain control, but Aria's grip was unrelenting. Clara's breath came in ragged gasps, her eyes narrowing. You think this is over? You think you can stop us?" Aria didn't answer. Instead, she reached for the control panel, her fingers flying over the interface. The facility's core systems were hers now, and as she activated the final sequence, the entire facility began to tremble. The Zhyrex's infrastructure, their weapons, their control center, was all coming down. "No," Clara rasped, her voice breaking with panic. "You'll kill us all." "That's the idea," Aria said, her voice cold. The walls of the facility groaned as the power systems shut down, lights flickering and alarms blaring in rapid succession. Clara struggled one last time, but Aria's strength was too much. The Zhyrex commander, once so confident, now realized too late that humanity's will was not something to be underestimated. The Zhyrex empire was crumbling. And it was because of Aria. As the building around them began to collapse, Aria stood tall, her chest heaving with adrenaline. Clara lay at her feet, defeated and helpless. It was over. For now. Aria turned toward the exit, her mind already racing. This was just the beginning. The Zhyrex had underestimated humanity, but they would learn. The fight for survival wasn't over. Not yet. Aria stood in the wreckage of the Zhyrex facility, her chest rising and falling with the rhythm of adrenaline. The hum of the collapsing systems reverberated through the crumbling walls, a harsh reminder that she had done what she came here to do, destroy them. But even as the facility was burning around her, she couldn't shake the gnawing feeling that this victory was only the beginning of something far larger. The alarms, now more chaotic than before, blared through the shattered corridors. Clara's cold, calculating voice still echoed in her ears, taunting her in the moments before the commander's defeat. Aria had destroyed the heart of the Zhyrex Empire on this planet, but there were more of them out there. Clara had been just one piece of the puzzle, one cog in the machine. The Zhyrex were far from finished, and Aria was certain they would not take their loss lightly. She moved quickly through the burning facility, her enhanced senses picking out every crack, every shadow, every faint movement. The hum of the collapsing structure was becoming a roar, like the world itself was pushing back against her intrusion. The ground trembled beneath her feet as the last of the facility's defenses faltered. Ahead, the exit was a faint flicker of light in the distance. She could feel the walls closing in, the pressure mounting as the power systems failed completely. Time was running out. Aria's pace quickened, her muscles still fueled by the strange, alien energy coursing through her body. But then, she stopped. A sound, soft but unmistakable, came from the darkened hallway ahead. A faint crackle, the sound of someone shifting against the rubble. Aria's hand instinctively went to her sidearm, her fingers brushing the smooth metal of the weapon's grip. She approached cautiously, the silence now heavier than it had been moments ago. It wasn't the Zhyrex. At first, she thought it might be another soldier, someone else sent to stop her. But then, as she rounded the corner, she saw her. A woman, human, huddled in the corner, bruised and battered, but very much alive. Aria froze, disbelief momentarily gripping her chest. The woman's eyes were wide, her hands shaking as she reached out toward Aria. She looked familiar, but it took Aria a moment to place her. "Aria," the woman whispered, her voice hoarse, almost broken. "Is it really you?" Aria's heart skipped. She knew this woman. "Lina," Aria breathed, her voice thick with emotion. "What? What are you doing here?" Lina's lips trembled, her face pale and drawn. She had been one of the first civilians captured when the Zhyrex launched their initial assault on Earth. Aria had thought her lost, just another casualty in the brutal war that had already claimed so many. But here she was, alive. "Aria, Lina's voice faltered. "I've been waiting. I thought you were dead. I didn't know who else to trust. But I knew you would come. I had to believe." Aria moved quickly toward her, kneeling down beside Lina. Her mind was racing, trying to process the moment. This was unexpected. She had come here to destroy the Zhyrex, not to find a survivor. But Lina was a reminder, humanity was capable of so much more than just fighting. There was hope, even in the darkest places. "Lina, we have to get out of here," Aria said, her voice low but urgent. She reached out to help her to her feet, her mind already calculating their escape route. The building was falling apart, and she knew that every second counted. But as she helped Lina stand, a flicker of movement caught Aria's eye, an unmistakable silhouette standing in the shadows. Chlora. The Zhyrex commander had somehow survived, her exoskeleton battered but still functioning. The look on Chlora's face was pure rage, a twisted smile curling across her lips. "So, this is how it ends, then?" Chlora's voice was cold, mocking. "You think you've won? You think you've destroyed us? How quaint." Aria's hand went to her sidearm again, but she didn't draw it immediately. Chlora had been beaten, broken, but the Zhyrex weren't known for their inability to survive. There was no way they would let her walk away from this without making sure she paid the price for her defiance. "We haven't won, Chlora," Aria replied, her voice steady. "Not yet." The room crackled with tension, the air thick with the weight of impending violence. But then, to Aria's surprise, Chlora didn't move forward. Instead, the Zhyrex commander's eyes flickered toward Lina, and a strange glint of recognition crossed her face. "Another human," Chlora sneered. "Pathetic." Lina took a step back, her eyes wide with terror. "Please," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Please don't. I am done begging." Aria's words cut through the air like a blade. She stepped between Lina and Chlora, her stance wide, her body braced for the fight she knew was coming. Chlora's expression shifted, and for a brief moment, it seemed as if the Zhyrex commander would strike. But then, she just stared, silent and cold. "You're still too weak," Chlora said, her voice sharp. "You think you can stop us with this little rebellion? You're nothing." Aria felt the blood in her veins surge, but she controlled the urge to strike out. This was no longer just about her fight. It was about all of humanity. About proving the strength that ran through their bones, the strength that refused to bend, no matter how deep the wound. "No," Aria said, her voice calm but resolute. "We're not weak. We're just getting started." Before Chlora could respond, Aria spun on her heel, grabbing Lina's arm and pulling her toward the exit. The Zhyrex commander stood there, silent for a moment, as if weighing her next move. But then, without warning, she turned and bolted down the hallway, her powerful legs carrying her toward the facility's central chamber. Aria didn't hesitate. She followed, her every muscle aching with the effort. There was no room for mercy now. There was only survival. The world outside this crumbling facility had no idea what was happening beneath their feet. But when Aria emerged, she would make sure they understood. The Zhyrex had underestimated humanity for far too long. And now, it was time to make them regret it.